Hello, my name is King Jupiter, and welcome back to our campaign recap, episode number 5, I believe. Alright, so last time we left off with the party just arriving outside of Redwall, and I said that there could be some character kind of conflict. I don't think that really happened too much. I mean, it happened vaguely, but forget that. Margaret seems more autonomous now. So, remember when we left off, Matthew was unconscious and now a first generation tiefling. Margaret also looks like that because she chooses the form he actually is, not the form he used to be, but his true form. And since he is basically reincarnated, he is now a tiefling, which is exciting for him and everyone else. So Margaret, given her master, the one who she takes orders from, is kind of incapacitated at this time. She is caught at the crossroads. She stays quiet for about 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. She's really not sure what to do with this newfound sort of freedom and what she chooses to do and say. She takes care of Matthew, obviously, and we're just kind of leaving it there for now. She's kind of in this holding pattern where the party can tell she's making decisions for herself without her master anymore. We'll see how that goes in a bit. But the party leaves the lake that they showed up on, the Crystal Lake, the clear lake that was on the border of both the Elven lands and the Dwarven lands. They head north towards Redwall, which is the outer city, so called because it was a human settlement that is connected to a mountain that is one of the main dwarven strongholds. So there are many kingdoms of dwarves. All kingdoms of dwarves sort of pay homage to each other and used to all work together up until they sort of lost connection. The roads that used to connect the undersides of they used to connect the underground no longer do due to being overrun or disrepair, and so the dwarves don't work together like they used to. But they still have these roads out there somewhere, and perhaps the party will find one. Hint, hint. All right, so they arrive at the outer city. Now it's called Redwall, so called because the sediment that settled in the valley where this citadel is, it has this red rock. Think Sedona in the west of the United States. This red rock, this red sediment that they've used to mine out, combine in the quarry, make stronger, and it's become the basis for this wall, hence red. It's a very red in color wall, red wall. It's about 100 feet high, 20 feet thick. It's a big marvel of dwarven engineering that it's this big and this thick. It has clear signs of wear and tear, like it has been sieged multiple times and then patched. That's because the dwarves were basically the thing. Let's not get to that right now. If I get to why it's all broken and all that, I'm gonna have to speak about kind of the origins of the world and how the Great War happened about 600 years prior to the start date of this campaign. Prior to the start date of this campaign, there was a great war between elves, dragonborn, and humans, and then the other races were also involved, but those three were the main ones, and basically it ended up with the humans winning, barely. So they arrive at the outer wall, and the dwarves there say, "Hey, the outer city Redwall is shut to you. You're non-dwarves." Actually, what they first say is they ask, "Are you merchants?" The party responds, "No, we're travelers." If they would have responded, "Yes, we are merchants," I would have just had them pay 100 gold fine. But they did not respond that they were merchants. So instead, they were given a task. The dwarves had a task for them, a quest. The dwarves say that there's down the west road, and also the roads around Redwall. You can tell this was once like a bastion of people and kind of trade and all this stuff, because the roads are well maintained. It's cobblestone roads. That ends after about a couple miles outside, so you can tell that this was once a place that had a lot of foot traffic, and they wanted to keep the roads strong and sturdy for long periods of time. So that's why they did that. The party heads up the west road. The guards at the gate say, "Hey, one of our scouts haven't reported back. Actually, it's a convoy. One of their supply convoys hasn't come to the city on time. They're about a day or two late, and they want someone else to go look at it. They can't spare the manpower to go look for their own convoy supplies. You can tell this is, you can infer at this point that the outer guard is probably very sparse, too sparse to really maintain their lands that surround the area. So you kind of get an idea of what's going on there. They're definitely short on manpower, but so they asked this group of basically mercenaries, know-nothings, these strangers in their land, to go and rescue their own convoy. And this convoy isn't like a convoy of military soldiers. It's a convoy of like food and supplies. The dwarves' land is very spread out, and it's all centralized here. All the stuff gets brought into Redwall, into the inner city. So from outside, there's a lot of convoys coming in to help supply Redwall with its basic needs. So the party heads for a couple hours on down the west road, and they come upon the convoy. It has clearly been destroyed. Smoke rises from a couple of the carts. There's about 7 or so carts there. A couple destroyed. There's a dead hill giant they find. That's kind of weird. We'll get to that in a second. There's some bodies. Clearly there was a conflict here, and it didn't end well for the dwarves. No survivors that you can see. A dead hill giant, several dead dwarves. Most of the dwarves are actually common folk, merchants, farmers, that sort of thing, not warriors. There are a few warriors down, but they do notice that there are fewer bodies here than there should be for the size of the convoy that it was. So that kind of raised some questions. Where did the bodies go? Were they eaten? It's hill giants. What are hill giants doing in the mountains? That's weird. But it's all sort of culminating in this strange sort of situation, and it all ends when a boulder comes flying down from the top of the mountain and smacks our paladin in the side of the head. Given the scale of the boulder, probably it would be more apt to say his whole torso gets engulfed in rock. And the battle begins. The giants, which had set up an ambush, these are hill giants, by the way, the dumbest giant of them all. It's basically just an eating machine. Big, huge eating machine is basically what a hill giant is if you don't know. They're very stupid. They don't plan much of anything except for, this is in front of my face, I will now eat it. So it's odd that they've set up this ambush that's pretty cleverly planned. They wait until the party has taken some time and spread out among the convoy to kind of begin their attack so that the party isn't centralized and they have an ability to pick them off. They are on either side of the mountain, and they're both throwing rocks down the mountain, about 30 feet down at the party, making it hard for the party to get to them because they're going to have to walk up the mountain. They're going to have to scale a mountain to get to these hill giants. All the while, there's some big looming fog producing. It's this yellow spore cloud off in the distance, and it's coming towards the party as this fight is going on. So they know, okay, we got to finish off these hill giants because something bigger is on its way. It turns out that this big figure is actually a stone giant, which has been sort of possessed or something. It has this strange fungal growth up the side of its face and on its chest, and it's this yellow speckled fungus. And the party gets really close to dying, but they actually pull through. Everybody dies, and they find that inside these giants. Oh, I forgot. One of the important things to note about one of these hill giants is its neck was clearly broken. It was like slumped to the side and had like dead eyes, but it was still acting as if it was being controlled even past death. But it wasn't undead per se. So they cut open these giants after they're done, and they find there's these strange blood mushroom type spore things growing on their organs inside, the hill giants specifically. It's growing on their insides. And the stone giant had this big spore cloud around him, this yellow spore cloud that sort of made, well, you didn't know what it does. Actually, it was a charm effect, but unfortunately, the barbarian had his rage on, so he couldn't be charmed. So we won't know what that does until maybe they get affected by it later on. We'll find out. After messing with these mushrooms for a little while, they find that the blood mushroom, which they took samples of both mushrooms, the yellow speckled one and the blood one sort of liquefies after a while into this strange ichor. It sloshes around and it takes like a liquid form. It's no longer a mushroom. After a while, it just kind of dissociates. They also find out that fire really affects the yellow spores. The spore cloud dissipated by 10 feet for every fire spell or fire attack that hits the stone giant, which they discovered in mid-play. And I think one of our players felt really cool when he figured out, oh wait, fire is going to really affect this guy. And then he started using fire spells on him, and I think it was great. It was a really good example of like players kind of figuring out how to beat an enemy effectively, and it was really good times. So they salvage what they can from the convoy. They use mending to mend some of the carts that were broken. 2 of them are unsalvageable, but the rest are okay. They get some of the giant rams that the dwarves use as pack animals were still surviving, so they end up having these 2 rams pull 5 carts that were meant for 2 rams per cart. So the rams are struggling, but it's only a couple-hour journey, so I have them roll for it, some animal handling checks, and they actually make it through. Probably the rams are going to need some downtime after that. But they get to Redwall. The guards say, "Oh, well done, good job." They didn't really know what was going on. They heard that there were giants in the area, but they had no idea that there was this weird corruption spore thing associated with them. This is kind of new to them, at least on the surface. They have heard of this down below. They've been having problems down below for a long time, and this is something that they've at least heard of tangentially. So as they walk through Redwall, and there are several layers of walls inside, because it's a city built specifically to take siege so that the inner city, the main dwarven city, doesn't get hit. So as they're going through the city, they find that the houses are very well built, very, very nice, but have had years and years of decay and time gone against them. They don't see a soul through the whole first tier of the city, the whole first section of the city. There's just no one there. When you're thinking about how this city is separated, think Attack on Titan, if you know what that is. Wall, section of the city, wall, section of the city. Kind of like that. So their suspicions are pretty much confirmed that the outer city's contingent of guards is pretty limited, especially when they get to the center and they find out that basically almost all the dwarves that aren't on patrol are in this tap house that's kind of been made this like communal tap house. There are only a few buildings actually in functional state. Not many buildings are actually used in the area. As it turns out, there's one blacksmith. It's actually the blacksmith's apprentice. There's one trading hall. It's not instead of like a single shop, it's like one big building was sectioned off for all trade. So there's a bunch of little stalls in there that they can go to. Then there's the tap house, which is basically free food, free room and board, because if you get this far into the city, they know that you are either a merchant and you're providing a benefit to the city, or you're a mercenary and you've already done work to gain access to the city. So it's all communal, it's all free access, because you're basically supporting the common good. I think this is kind of like a co-op, I would say. They spend the night, enjoy themselves, get massively drunk, and then the captain of Redwall, think Captain of Gondor from Lord of the Rings, he is waiting for them at the main gate to the Dwarven City in the morning and says, "Hey, I heard you guys did a good job. I imagine you're trying to head to the inner city. What is it you want?" The party says, "Well, we're here for the library. We're interested in getting into that. We want to peruse that." And he responds, "No. No one is allowed. No non-dwarves, and especially no, and even no dwarves that are from the surface or outsiders. No outsiders, and especially no non-dwarves, are allowed into the Hall of Memories, it's called. It's their great library where they keep all the memories of their people. However, he does say, "Hey, I do have a quest that you might go on to gain favor. The king would have to allow you to go into the Hall of Memories, and I know just the thing that might get you in." He sets them on this quest, and this quest is to go down into the center of the city, down to the mines. They're having trouble with things coming out of the mines and attacking basically common folk, this corruption that they've been dealing with. And they think, in contrast to Redwall, the inner city, when they go inside, they find it's very bustling, very populous. It's a stark contrast to Redwall. Redwall, the outer city, seems to have been more or less abandoned when trade kind of dried up, probably from the elves not really wanting to trade with them and the Green Sea cutting off communication with the humans. So really they're kind of on their own, except for the underground road system that connects all the kingdoms of the dwarves. Unfortunately, those are closed off due to the corruption. So this city is separated, pretty much isolated completely. It has itself to support itself. It's basically its own city-state instead of part of a collection of kingdoms, which is bad for them militarily and bad for them trade. It's basically just bad in every possible way. It is basically a city-state that has no trading interests right now. So the captain of Redwall leads them into this entryway. He has the gates open, which open to this big crank system. He leads them in and says, I'm not allowed to be in here because, and this is their first taste of the caste system of the dwarves. Outer dwarves, the surface dwarves, even the surface dwarves, like great warriors of the surface dwarves, are considered kind of taboo, not allowed inside the city. Then they have the nobles and basically what you would think about a normal feudal structure. But yeah, there's this rigid caste system that all dwarves adhere to, and he basically hands them over to another captain of the guard from inside the city, and he's like, yeah, okay, Captain Redwall has told me about this quest he thinks you might be good for. We're very willing to hire some mercenaries to do this because we don't want to spare our own men. There's this air that they would much rather risk their lives than dwarven lives, and obviously they've proven themselves capable, so why not? Their payment has been not asked for, so right now they've basically gone on this quest with no payment in mind, other than we might let you into the library, maybe. Right, so this quest is to find a group of missing scouts. And you might think, well, why would the dwarves care about one specific group of scouts other than altruism? Well, it turns out that one of the scouts, by some mistake, is a noble. Noble families usually put their children, especially militaristic families, put their noble children into the military, where they have where they do basically odd jobs until they take a high-ranking title. Even in the dwarven structure, this promotion by merit isn't always a thing in all facets. So, by mistake, one of these nobles gets put on a scouting mission. Maybe they went themselves. Who knows? But the point is that the scouts have gone missing, and that noble is important enough to get people sent out to find them. So the party heads down. They get to a certain point in the mines where they see a break out, like into their mine shaft from inside these natural caverns. And the dwarves say, well, here you go on adventuring. This is the path they took, but we don't know where they went from here. And the party heads down, and after a few hours of going deeper and deeper and deeper, they come into this natural cavern, they hear rushing water, and they are set upon by umber hulks, which, if you don't know what they are big, ugly bug creatures that confuse you when you look at them. Party has never fought these before, so I thought the first round of combat they should all have to be affected by the confusion, and then after that they can choose to avert their gaze. But for the first round of combat, they've never fought these creatures before. They don't know to turn their gaze, and so they just roll their save. The fight goes pretty well, but unfortunately for Momo, one of our characters, Melora, she is killed by one of the Umber Hulks in like the last round of combat. One of the bug creatures scoops her up with its mandibles and tries to escape with her. So she gets knocked out, she goes unconscious, and then I try to run my game how I think the creatures would act, not in the nicest way I can. I want it to be immersive first, and I don't want to say that. I want it to be fun first and immersive second, but I thought it would be unreasonable for the creature to not want to take its food with it and run. So what it does is it knocks her down, then uses its mandible attack to grab her and pick her up, costing her to 2 death saves because mandible attack on an unconscious victim, melee attack, auto crit, auto 2 fails. So it picks her up, and then it starts to run. It starts to burrow away to try to get away from the party so that it can eat its meal in peace. Momo. Unfortunately, she fails her next death save, and that is unfortunately it for her. Now we come to the problem of, okay, a character is dead. How does the party react to this? Well, that's totally up to the characters. I mean, it's totally up to the players how their character would react to the situation. Melora, is a 17-year-old girl, very innocent, not worldly at all. She's the youngest of the group by far. So basically the whole party has been witness to this young girl getting brutally murdered in front of their eyes by some strange, wicked creature in the depths of the world. This should affect people. I'm curious to see how it's going to happen. We don't have... it's hard to really roleplay this out when not everyone wants to roleplay. And that's okay that not everyone does. But I really want to give the people who want to roleplay a chance to do that, because it's fun. I think strenuous, tenuous moments like this one, when a player dies, is a great chance to do something really fun roleplay wise. If you're not into that, it's something you can just kind of ignore and let the people who really enjoy it do it. But if you are into that, I really want to give players the chance to enjoy that sort of a situation. So basically, there are a couple options for them to survive. We have a warlock who might appeal to his patron for their survival. We have Renwald, which is like they don't like him very much. He seems to be evil and super evil, but he can help them, and once he has a vested interest in them surviving. So he would be probably a very viable option, but his help would almost certainly come at a price. The other option is reincarnation by druid, but the dwarves don't really do druidic magic, so they would probably have to go to the elves, which are right next door, less than a day's travel away, really. But the elves don't really like the humans based on the Great War, and the elves don't really like the dwarves based on the Great War. But as in all cultures, there are some people who will always put humanity and life and kindness first, and then their bias and racial issues second. Which is good. So they could appeal to the elves' humanity, which sounds almost kind of like an oxymoron. So yeah, that's pretty much this episode. I think I've covered everything that happened. We covered going to Redwall. We covered the mission that they did. We covered entering Redwall. We covered going down to the depths, and we covered Momo's death, and now we've covered how she might survive this. So the options, I believe, just to reiterate them one more time for my players, are reincarnation. You could have Renwald help. You could have Ianua, which is our warlock's patron, help. I have a paladin who worships Bahamut. Bahamut might be willing to help. And then we have another religious character. He might be able to appeal. Matthew has training in religion, though he's been kind of off the path for a long time. But maybe this is a great chance for Matthew's character to kind of find his way back to the light. It could be a really interesting character development moment to see him come back to his god and appeal to his god to save this young life, which could be really interesting. I love stuff like that. Yeah, I think we've mostly covered it. We have 5 players that I think are in a good position to do something about it. We will have to see what happens next time, but I'm confident she'll survive. But the circumstances under which she survives is where the really exciting stuff is going to happen. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're feeling really generous, you could share the video. I think that will help the channel grow the most. Anyway, I'll see you later.